So there's a woman down the end of the street, and she's quite friendly-ish. Well, sometimes she's friendly, but she's been a bit funny lately, and going on about my partner Chris, and she always has sort of a look on her face when she's saying something or other about Chris and the car, and and I'd said something about, well, my spouse, and that's odd. It all sounds like part of a teapot, doesn't it, spouse? And anyway, I just think actually she's just got that idea that actually we're a bit odd, and it's really, I find it quite hurtful really, because I think we've lived here a long time, we're just ordinary folks, Chris will go in the garden, loves DIY, brilliant at DIY, and I just sit on the front bench, I might read whatever, and why treat us differently, Get a lot of funny looks as well, because I don't know, do they see it as we've got a mixed marriage, or how would you term it? I'm not even sure really. I suppose it is a mixed marriage really. Sorry, I should have introduced myself. How rude is that? And you're probably wondering who I am and what's all this about. My name's Rosie, and my lovely partner, my mixed marriage, my spouse, is my wife, Christine. So I'm Rosemary and Christine, or Rosie and Chris and Rosie. And we've been together 28 and a half years. We're very happy. And we have a lovely time, but actually we still meet barriers. We still meet people who see us as not quite the same as them, or not entitled to have the same treatment as them. Or quite often, if they are introducing me to something, or I go into, say, a medical setting, and they might say, "Are you married?" And I'll say, "Yes, I am." And then they say, "Okay, where's your husband?" And I'll say, "Oh, I haven't got one, I've got a wife." And then there's sort of a slow intake of breath, and I've had a couple of times where they've actually looked down and looked in the bin because they're embarrassed. And then I feel uncomfortable. I don't know what to do with myself, because it's immediately set up a barrier. It's like having a glass wall come down in front of me. So they're over there and I'm here. And it feels really not nice, I suddenly think, I can't trust them. They're not going to listen to me. I just wonder, is that what you expected? When I started that ramble, did you expect it would be Rosie and Jim, or Rosie and Christopher? Did you expect man and woman? Or did you not have any expectations? Because I think that's the odd thing about society. Still today we have expectations of what we see as norm, or normal, or acceptable even. The fact that if someone's married, they assume if you're a woman you've got a guy, and vice versa. But the world is quite open and it's changing. And they use the term woke now as some sort of an insult, which is a bit odd, because woke is just being aware of difference, aware of someone who might have been pushed to the edges, excluded, made to feel not quite right, made to feel other. And society does that a lot. It makes people feel other. You don't fit in. And I just wonder how you would feel if you were told one day you didn't fit in. You'd walked into a medical services, you were desperately unwell, you needed help immediately, but they were taking the time about finding out who you are and where you fit into the scheme of things. People say I'm too right on. I'm banging on all the time about inclusion and non-discriminatory practice, etc. And I suppose I do really, and I don't want to. I want to just be quiet and have a quiet life, because I'm not well myself now. I'm using medical services and care services a lot. And we all will, because ill health discriminates against nobody. It can hit anybody. We're not going to start our life and end our life in the same brilliant state of health. We will have needs. And if you've got needs, you need somebody to be open and helpful to you. So what I want is to have a life where I can just be accepted for who I am. So I can walk into a hospice setting or a hospital or a care home, if ever it went that way, that I could just say, here I am, I'm Rosie, I don't like chocolate cake, I like a cup of Earl Grey tea in the afternoon. But I want the person who's meeting me to initially meet me with, hello, hi, what's your name? Do you want to tell me a bit about yourself? Do you have a partner? Is he or she here? Or is there some other label you want to use? It's as simple as that. It sounds heavy going. I don't know why people are embarrassed about saying those few words, but with those few words, you can open up doors. You can open up the world for somebody, and you make them relax within those few seconds of saying, tell me about yourself if you want to. You've actually invited somebody into the world. You've not closed the doors, because that's what a lot of labelling can do. It closes the doors. So actually, just give yourself those few moments to think about that little phrase that I've said, and think about how would it be if actually the world was predominantly LGBTQ or different, and heterosexual people were the minority. So you've come into a service now and somebody's spoken to you. How would you feel if you've been mislabelled or you've been pushed down? Just have a moment just to think about that. How did that feel? Was it uncomfortable? Or could you not do it? Or did you do it and find actually you were suddenly feeling a bit uneasy in yourself? You were the outsider. The shoes didn't fit, they were too tight, they weren't yours. It can make you feel actually totally alienated from everything that you've known. And that's how people with labels feel every day, that they're having to fit in, they're having to translate what is seen as normal life, ordinary outside worlds, to be understandable in their world. And nobody should have to do that. We should all be able to say, we're open to difference. I might not agree with you, but I respect your right and your ability to say that or to label yourself that. I don't have the right to push a label on you. Does it make you feel embarrassed or difficult? I know at times I've felt difficult when I've had to say to somebody, no, I had a husband, we got divorced 30 years ago, because that's wasted my time. Now, if I've been rushed into hospital and I'm having a heart event or I can't breathe, I don't want to waste my precious breath on explaining who I am, where I come from, or the fact that my wife is so upset she's out there waiting for me and you won't let her in. Because one doctor, he did say, where's your husband? And he'd been out to the waiting room and he'd looked around, couldn't see any guys, come back in and said, he's not here. And I'd already explained it's not he, it's a she. And I had to send him back out to look for Chris and say, she's small, she's got white hair, she's quite quiet, and I need her now. Because when you're really on the edge of health, when you're feeling, that you can't breathe or you don't know if you're going to die, what do you need? You need the person you love. You need the person that you feel comfortable with, that you can totally relate to. Imagine if you hold the hand of your loved one, the one who's closest to you, your whole body relaxes, your breathing slows, you feel secure in the world. And that's how everybody should feel. And that's how I want to feel every time I'm ill, or if I've been admitted, or if I'm needing extra care. I want to be able to feel the person I love the most is valued as much as I am, and our relationship is valued, and we are seen as equally as important as anybody else. And that will give me time to then think, I feel confidence in that nurse, that carer, that doctor, that service provider. because I want to feel confident. I want to feel like I can actually give myself over to somebody who's got my best interests at heart. I recall, it was a long time ago now, when civil partnerships first became law, how pleased I was that actually we had recognition. And I remember telling a family member, the civil partnerships have come out, and Chris and I, we've decided, although we've been together lots of years, we want to go ahead and have a civil partnership, and I wanted this person to come. And the reaction was a long pause, and then, well, why do people have to bang on about, what's all the flag waving about and banging of drums about, and is it important? We've got a banking crisis, and actually I'll be busy anyway. And within that one instance, my whole world shrunk, and I felt like I'd been dismissed and made to feel like I was something dirty and not worth giving some time to. And I felt so sad, so terribly sad about it, because I know that this person loves me, and I love that person, that family member. And there are lots of people experiencing similar things in families where they want to come out, they want to say, this is me, and the whole of me includes the bit of me that actually loves a person of the same sex or the same gender. My sexual orientation is not heterosexual, but actually I feel like I want to be recognised and valued and seen for who I am. I've been called a man-hater as well, and that really hurts, because actually some of my closest friends are guys. But to me, the gender is almost irrelevant. I can laugh and joke with them, we're very close. And I love people. I love people for who they are, for their ethics, their morals, their politics, how they treat other people. So I'm certainly not a man-hater, and I don't just, to the exclusion of all others, love females. I want to spend my time with females because I just happen to fall in love with a female. It doesn't mean that the rest of the world to me is irrelevant, actually. If Chris had been a guy, I'd have fallen in love with Chris still, because it's the Chrisness of Chris that I love, because she's a wonderful person. But I think we should also think about when we're bringing up our children, how do we educate our children? How do we say to our children, this is the world, and there are all kinds of differences and all kinds of people, and it's okay to, if you're in a school, have your little girlfriend if you're a girl, or have your little boyfriend, because it's not a big deal, is it? It's not the end of the world. It just says that actually they're being affectionate, and affection is one of those things that we're in short supply of. Because if the world had more kindness and love and caring, maybe we'd have less attacks on people or wars even. We need to think about how we communicate with each other. And some of that goes back to when I first said about the neighbour, or me going into hospitals. We need to look at the non-verbals as well. So we might not be able to open up somebody and get them to say that actually they're not heterosexual or they're not as is assumed. But if we read non-verbals, we can learn all kinds of things. When I worked many, many years ago on a stroke ward in a hospital, and I was assigned a number of cases. And one of these was, there was an older lady who she'd had a stroke. She was non-verbal, struggling, but quite alert. You could tell she was really alert. And they'd put down on her notes that actually she had no family, nobody to visit. Nobody was there. But actually I noticed that although the staff were very busy, every day another woman of a similar age came to visit. And she was so caring of Edna. She massaged her hands because one of her arms wouldn't work. She used to stroke her face, and she'd be talking to her all the time and encouraging her. and reading stories to her and saying, Edna, do you remember this? And she'd tell her things. And just the look of love between the visitor, who was called Janet, and the patient Edna was just so amazing. It kind of lit up a room when Janet looked at Edna. It was like a big bright light had filled the space. And to me, they were a couple in love. They weren't just strangers. Janet wasn't just a neighbour. She was somebody who was highly relevant and important in Edna's life. But actually, because they'd never been out, they lived next door to each other and could never say that they were a couple, it was all a secret. I guess that was to do with the fact that actually they were a bit older, maybe they were in their 70s or something, and of course it was very much frowned upon years ago. You know, for men it was an imprisonable offence. But for women they had to be careful, because if they had children and had been married, their children might have been taken off them. So here's this couple. They were a couple, but they weren't recognised as being a couple. And I remember they had a team meeting about where Edna should go next, because she'd been on the ward a long time, and a decision had to be made. Should she go home with some care put in place, or was she too poorly and unable to manage, and should she be assigned a nursing home or a care home? And it turned out that actually she couldn't manage. They decided that she should go to a care home. And I remember when Janet was coming to visit, I took her to one side and I tried to gently say, Edna's going to have a decision made about her care today, and I can't tell you a lot about it because you're not down as a relative, but I feel it's important to you, and I wonder, would you like to tell me anything about your friendship or who you are to each other? Maybe you'll want to try and have a word about what happens with Edna and Edna's care. And Janet did tell me a little bit about them as a couple, but she said she just couldn't tell anybody that they were a couple. She just would die. And she was so distraught, she didn't know what to do with herself, and she just said, I don't want to lose her, but I just feel I can't, because we've had all of these years, 50 plus years, of just living how we live, and I love her to bits, but I know I couldn't care for her, but I want to be able to see her. So I think there was an arrangement where she was allowed to go to the care home that Edna was sent to, and she did get some visits in. But the sad thing was that you could see, I bumped into them because I went to the care home to make sure that everything was in place. But these two women were sort of shrivelling and losing each other. And I think within a few months they had both died. And it broke me up. It made me feel so sad that actually there was a couple who were undoubtedly a couple. I could see it. I'm sure lots of people could see it by the non-verbals. But as a society and as, if you like, bureaucracy and processes, they weren't allowed to be that couple. And it ended their lives. And that was just hugely sad. As a professional person, it's sad to see that happen. And I guess I'm saying too, if you're a professional person watching this, to think about how you treat people, and do you read the non-verbals? Are you open? Are you trying to think around things, or do you just stick rigidly to the script? It's about being human really, and about being a bit flexible about what you can offer and what somebody needs, and not only wants but really needs. What do they need? How would you feel if you were suddenly made invisible? That actually, if you are a woman and you've had a husband for 25 years, if suddenly your husband has to move out, he has to hide all his things, and he's no longer able to make decisions about you because it's wrong, it's not natural, it's not acceptable. How do you feel? We all need health and social care at some point in our lives. So if you work in a health or social care setting, think about who you're working with, because there is a power imbalance. Normally the professional has got all the power, the person who's the service user has very little power. But I'm asking you to bring that down a little bit and say, we're trying to work on an even keel, so ask that service user what they want. Tell me about yourself. What do you think we can do? You know, do that goal setting together, and don't label them, let them label themselves. So let's just celebrate difference. Instead of finding difference a problem and saying it doesn't fit in, let's say, I'm listening. Tell me about yourself. And what I want to say to you today is, thank you for listening to me. My name's Rosie, and I hope you can take some of this away with you and perhaps use it in your job, or maybe just think about how you are in the world. Peace and light to you.